Hi, my name is Dr. Stephanie Lomeli, and today we're going to discuss your Progress Assessment 1, Occusal Amalgam Restorations. Now, these restorations are going to be comped on a mandibular first molar, so it's possible that it could be either 19 or 18. I highly recommend you practice both. One of the key aspects is going to be positioning that you have to get used. The other thing to keep in mind throughout this video is keep in mind that the criteria that you're going to be graded on is going to be on anatomical form, margins, as well as finish, function, and damage. Now, the last one is really going to take into consideration how much attention to detail you took throughout the comp, making sure that you didn't damage the tooth structure on top by scraping too hard. Very easy to do. Keep in mind that you're working with a soft plastic. Intraorally, you're always going to be burnishing against enamel, which is going to be harder than bone, so you don't have to worry about scraping it too hard. Anytime you're working on a comp, please make sure that you're being extra careful with the plastic material because you don't want to lose easy points. Now, throughout the demo, I'm going to be explaining how to make sure that you don't lose points on anatomic form, making sure that your grooves and your cusp are in the right position, as well as making sure your margins are flushed. Okay, you want to make sure that immediately after triturator, you get it into your well right away. Try not to waste any time. You can get the carpal and throw it into the amalgam waste. Now, when you're packing amalgam, you can put your finger under the rest to give yourself a little bit more support. And as you're condensing the amalgam into the carrier, you want to do it with an upward position so that way you don't drop the amalgam outside. Now, once you get a little amalgam in, you can lightly press on the carrier to be able to condense it within the carrier. Okay, you want to start at one end, and as you're dispensing the amalgam, you want to slowly move over in the restoration to where you get pretty even disbursement. Now, first you're going to use the large nib to condense initially, and then you'll change over from the 1.5 nib to the 1 millimeter nib. Now, as you're decreasing in size in the nib, you're able to apply more pressure and into a smaller area. Now, you want to make sure that you're doing a walking condensation. See how I'm making very small movements? Now you want to make sure that you're also using a lot of pressure. Okay, so now you're going to place your second increment, and you'll use about 3 increments. See again how I'm gliding it across. Coming back, and we're using the largest nib again to do the initial condensation. And then we're going to go to the smaller nib now. So at first you can kind of just aggressively pack. Once you kind of get it aggressively packed, then you can come back and do a walking. And some falls out, that's okay. And then you can even move to the even smaller nib. This is 0.7. You can see how I'm doing that walking motion again. Real important that you keep doing the walking motion and going progressively slower in the condensers. Progressively smaller in the condensers. Now for this last one, we want to make sure that we're over packing it. So condensed. As you notice, once you get to that final layer, you're going to have a really shiny look. Now that's the as it's becoming more and more condensed. Now here you can really focus on doing that lateral condensation, and it almost starts to create that form. Now as you come back and you're doing that wonking, you're wonking laterally. Might want to practice with your stress ball leading up to the exam. Get those hand muscles working. Okay. And then you can move to your smaller. This step is going to be really important. I cannot emphasize how important it is to over condense your upper layer. Anytime you're going to have submargination, this is going to be a pretty large factor. And later, as you transition from doing class 1s to doing class 2 amalgams, the chances of having voids is even higher if you don't condense properly. But see how I'm already starting to get that creasing. You can kind of see the groove. Lots of excess material. So okay, now this is where we bring in our burnishers. So this is the Beaver tail. I really like this one for creating that anatomy. You can really go into the fossas really nicely with this, really tracing that natural anatomy. And it's really important that you're going from the original tooth structure and following those grooves and then going into the central groove. So from the buccal, coming down. Another way to utilize this instrument is the tail aspect of it. So you can come down, and so I'm coming from the natural tooth structure. So this is how I'm really going to try to make sure that I'm not submarginating or supermarginating. Can't get into that angle. Okay, another great instrument to use is going to be your PKT, and I like to utilize the longer, skinnier end of the two. So one's longer, one's shorter and fatter. Comes down to preference. Now see how with each instrument that I utilize, it's starting to get a little bit more flush, a little bit more smooth looking. The real important aspect is that you don't want to play with it too much. See how I'm following those grooves? So if you follow your natural anatomy, then it makes it easy not to get those deductions for not having the proper form. Now to remove your extra flash. This is where some of the carvers really come into play. This is an IPC. And so see how I'm going from the natural tooth structure down. So I really like this one. I like it particularly for going from natural to structure down to the central groove. Now, two other nice instruments to use are the half Hollenbach as well as the discoid. Look at those tips. Those are really going to help you create nice, clean finishes as well. So real important, I'm showing you several instruments because you really want to know how to use every instrument in your armamentary. See how this, you can go nice slopes. And for this, as I'm scraping across, I'm putting pressure only on the two structure. So no pressures on the amalgam at all. Trying to get off that flash so I don't get easy points lost. See how nice that is? Now I'm going to do the other side with the discoid. Now, this distal fossa is an easy place to lose and submarginate, so you really have to be really extra careful not to remove too much. And this I like a little bit more for going into the grooves, into the area, making sure I'm creating that anatomy. Okay, so I'm pretty much done. Everything's pretty set up. Now I'm just gonna go back through one more time and just run my burnisher through. Now I'm starting to get it really smooth, really shiny. So I'm already getting to that point to where it's time to stop messing with it. And see how I'm going pretty fast? You want to go pretty fast using a light amount of pressure, not too terribly much. And see, every time I go into a groove, I really accentuate it, really go through. See, a lot of back and forth motion. Okay, one of the most important aspects of the preparation process is making sure that you're properly self-assessing. So you always want to have your grading criteria. So this is the sheet that they're going to use to grade you. They pass out one of these in class. You always want to have this out and go through each criteria and ask yourself, do I have my original cuspal contours of the restoration? Now, as you're doing that, you want to go through and make sure that you maintain those hills and valleys, because that's really what they're going to be looking for. Do you still have that anatomy? Now, if you can create, see how I really have that nice ridge here? If you blow that out, well, that's an easy way to get a deduction. The most common submargination, and it almost counts as two categories, because if you end up submarginating on the mesial ridge, triangular ridge, then you're also going to lose that anatomical form. So you have to be careful, because in some areas you can easily get two areas of deduction. Okay, so just making sure that you practice that mesial ridge and make sure that you are paying extra attention to that area, because that's one of the more common areas of submargination. The other aspect is, as you're practicing, you want to be able to identify what it means to have flush margins. So you want to be able to go through and start developing your eye. And see how I'm rubbing the preparation? So this is something that you can do while you're practicing, because you can also start learning to identify what submargination, supermargination is. You don't want to do this too much on the day of prep, on the day of your progress assessment, because if you look closely, you can actually see those lines from where I drew my Explorer. See how you can see those faint lines? So you don't want to have that accessory distracting margins there. Also, be aware of your fossas. It's really easy to submarginate in here. Let's see. Looks like I still have a little bit of flash. Now, right here in the secondary anatomy, this is another easy area where there can be a little bit of flash that's left. It almost looks like I left a little right here. So always double check these little indentions, these little grooves right here, the secondary anatomy. So you have your primary anatomy, and then this is your secondary. Okay. Okay guys, well, good luck on your progress assessment. And keep in mind everything that we discussed. Make sure that you practice utilizing all of your instruments. Make sure that as you're condensing, you're going from the largest condenser and the largest end of that condenser, the 1.5 millimeter end, transitioning to the 1 millimeter end, then to the 0.7 and to the 0.5. So it will be your dark blue and your lighter blue. If you can do that and incorporate the walking movement, finishing with lateral condensations, creating those grooves, that's how you're going to make sure that you don't chip or create voids or submarginations. And the final thing is making sure that you are properly using your burnishers, both the Beaver tail and the PKT, and then finishing with the carvers. Now, you don't want to play too much with it. You want to be able to manipulate it just enough, but stop while you're ahead.